Hi, and welcome to the Notepad Show. In today's episode, we're going to be going over how to render an ocean using Renderman in Solaris. And we're going to be using the same kind of workflow that you would use in Karma with a few caveats, a few workarounds that are required to get it to work properly with Renderman. So let's get started. I'm going to bring up a shot right here. So this is exactly, what we're going to be rendering. So we have the icebergs, have a little bit of a camera movement, very, very subtle. So it has a noise applied to it, to its rotation. And then, of course, the ocean itself. And it's all lit with an HDR. Okay, let's bring up Houdini. And this project starts with SOPs. So we're in SOPs. We have the icebergs. We got a camera. Here's that noise shader, noise on the rotation. And to do that, you just right click, go to motion effects, and then noise. If you wanted to do it on translation, you could do so. And then you just apply it. And it's pretty easy to do. And definitely highly suggested if it calls for it. It adds realism to your shot. Just having a little bit of subtle movement, and almost like you're on a boat looking at these icebergs. So then the big thing in this SOPs level is the ocean spectrum. Now, before I get started, I do want to give a shout out to Ryan Sheperd. Ryan created a tutorial that's on SideFX's website, and it was an inspiration for doing this tutorial. So just a shout out to Ryan. I will put a link in the description to this tutorial. It has a HIP file, and it goes over how ocean spectrum works, and also how it works in Karma. I took inspiration from this and then created something that works in Renderman. Okay. So we're going to go into the spectrum. I'm not going to go into this. Ryan goes into this, how spectrum works, but just wanted to show the node network. We are going to be doing the spectrum at render time. So we are going to be displacing through a shader this geometry right here, this grid, and we're going to be using spectrum data to drive this through a shader at render time again. Okay, so to do that, and there's tons of tutorials, but you should know that you have to write out the actual spectra data. Okay. And you also, in this case, we have a mask that goes with it. Again, when you watch Ryan's tutorial, you'll completely understand all this, but this is not what the tutorial that I'm doing is about. It's about doing rendering in Renderman. And then we have an ocean grid that is just an object merge on that base grid. Null. Right here. So why don't we get started? I'm going to go into Solaris. Okay. So here we are in Solaris. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in the icebergs. So I put down a scene import node, and I tag the icebergs. Okay. So the icebergs are in the shot. I'm going to bring in, and I'm going to label. I like to label everything. So icebergs. Now I'm going to bring in the camera. going to merge both of these. Okay. And we can look through the camera. There we go. And I'll just call this camera. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to bring in a second merge. Well, I'm going to bring in a dome light. And this is going to light the scene. Okay. So I need to find the texture that I want to use. Now I happen to know exactly where it's located, or I could choose it here, easy enough. It is 44, this one. And here it is. And I am going to make it visible to the camera, so I have to go into the Renderman tab and enable camera visibility. I'm going to put down another merge. And the reason I do this is just me. I like to keep the camera separate from and the lights separate from each other. Keep it clean, keep it organized. So if I wanted to add more lights, I could. And I want this node network to be able to be understood by somebody who might not be as versed at Solaris. So that's one of the points here. Then I'm going to bring in the Renderman ROP. I call it a ROP, but it is. It's the Renderman settings and the USD ROP together. And I'm going to plug that into the node network. Okay. And then one of the things I am going to denoise, so I'm going to set this up for denoising. Okay. And I'm going to go through and there are some passes that are enabled by default that I don't know why they are. They're not required. When you check off denoise, that will do all the variance passes that are required for denoising. So we don't need the beauty and the direct diffuse in this example, or the direct specular. None of that. I think there's a... I think that's it. There's nothing in shadow. And nothing there. So we're good. So we have the passes set up. This is also where you would set the resolution. We're going to set it to 1920 by 1080, 1080p. Okay. I'm going to uncheck as RGB because we're using denoising. That's just a habit. I don't think it's required anymore. You can have it checked off, but it's just me. I just do it out of habit. Okay, so we're pretty much set, I believe, on render settings. And if I do a rendering, well, before I do the rendering, there is something I want to do here. I'm going to label it again. So I'm going to label this as ENV light. Okay. And I know one thing about this particular light. I know that it has a rotation of 75 on the Y. And I also have an exposure of 1 extra. And if I hit RIS, we're starting to get somewhere. Okay. So one of the things we're going to do now is we're going to set up a shader for the icebergs. So right up here, I'm going to go to the preset browser. I have a shader that I've already built. I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to select the library. Well, I don't have a library right now, so I'm going to just bring it in and assign. There we go. It creates the library for me. And I guess we can leave it as that. I need to assign what geometry I want on that library, so let's do that as well. There we go. Let's take a look at the shader first. So the shader, like any shader in Renderman, a lot of people would want to use the PXR builder. Do not use the PXR builder. You're meant to use the Hydra delegate, the Renderman material builder Hydra. So that is the one that you really want to start using. And, you know, we'll call it test shader. And if we go in, this is like the collect node that you would normally see in Houdini. And then we can, you know, put a PXR surface or, you know, whatever we want, and we're plugged in, and that's how you do shading. We do not need that shader because we have the wet snow. So let's dive into it. And I don't know why. I haven't really done any investigating on this quite yet. But apparently all the BXDF out nodes on all the nodes here in the Llama shader are going to BXDF on the collect node or the sub output node. I'm not sure why that's the case. It has something to do with the preset browser, because when I made these shaders, I didn't do that. I didn't have those nodes connected up. So I'm just going to walk you through the wet snow shader, just so if you wanted to recreate it, you could. There's a Llama surface with opacity, subsurface, and interior, because we are going to be dealing with subsurface, and the dielectric, we're going to be dealing with the interior, and of course the opacity as well. We're plugging that into a Llama layer set to a 50 mix. On the bottom base layer is where we have the SSS. Okay. And here are the colors and the radius. This means that as light penetrates through the ice or snow or whatever you want to call it, once it hits a certain radius, this color will start penetrating through under the surface. I'm going to set this to 1.33. And I had to boost the scale, which is the controller for how that works. And I think it's just because it's snow. Scale it would be much lower for skin or jade or stuff like that. But in this case, I really need to boost the scale to get the light to penetrate all the way through, so it looks like wet snow, like it's almost melting from within. Okay, and then unit scale has to do with it's how subsurface works at the scale that you are actually your scene scale, your proper scene scale. And in this example, I'm working at a smaller scale, so hence a smaller unit scale. But if I was dealing with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meters, thousands of meters, I would increase this unit scale to get subsurface to work the way that it really should. Okay. We also have a dielectric to give a little bit of wetness to the top of the shader. We also have a little bit of a bling bling glittery stuff going on with the PXR flake. We also have a fractal that is driving displacement on the shader. Very slight, but it's there. And that's it. So here's some settings for the PXR flake, the fractal, and displacement. And that's all I'm going to say about the material. And I should be able to render. So we'll do that now. And we're starting to get some results. Awesome. So At this point, it's time to bring in the ocean. This is why you're watching this video. So the node to do that, there are two nodes that work in conjunction with each other. And then we'll go over the workaround. Okay? The node is called the ocean procedural node. So I'm going to drop down an ocean procedural node. Okay. I'm going to plug that. Actually, you know what? It's habit. I'm going to plug it into a merge node. Again, I want to keep these things nice and clean. So camera has its own, I don't know, in case I add multiple cameras if I need to. Okay. So of course, we have an error because we haven't told it the files that we want to bring in. So when you open up the ocean shader, the ocean procedural, you have to put in a spectrum file and a mask file. So we know what those files are. Because we generated them, and let me go back and show you where, again, for a reminder, right here. We wrote these files out. So we're going to put in the spectra. Keep saying spectrum, spectra. You know what I mean. All right. Let's bring in the mask. Okay. Now, here, the next field that's important is the render geometry. And here, we have to point it to, we have two choices. I like to keep things clean. We could just point it to base grid. But remember, I created an ocean grid geo with an object merge just to keep it nice and clean. And you actually, I don't even think you need that. I think you can just go right to that. Like that, okay? We're gonna talk about some of these nodes here, definitely the viewport quality. This is what controls the quality of the ocean in the viewport when doing real-time IPRs, okay? Most of these others nodes we don't need. I can tell you right now, we do not need the proxy material or the interior material. These are meant for Karma. Karma uses a volumetric material to do under the surface rendering. Renderman does too, but it does it at the shader level, and it's you've certainly seen it when you've done glass in the PXR surface Uber shader. So we only need the surface shader, the ocean surface. If we want to keep point velocity for motion blur purposes, we would do that here. We don't need cusp min and max. This will be for foam particles, but that's not for this particular tutorial right now. This shot does not call for foam. So this is pretty much all we need. Now, when I go to render right now, and we'll do that. Okay. You're not seeing the spectrum. You're like, well, what the heck? I thought we were supposed to see the spectrum. Not yet. There's one more node that goes in that works in conjunction with the ocean procedural. And that node is called the ocean preview, the preview procedural. It's the Houdini preview procedural node. And this node goes after the render settings. Now we should see some geo on the ocean. That's it. So let's see what comes up now. And we see a little bit of geo here. Okay. But if you notice, it's low res. It's really, really low res. So what I want to do is remember I told you that there is a setting here called viewport quality. Oh, and also uncheck reference render geometry as interior. Because again, we are not using Karma, and that is used when you're using Karma and MaterialX. We're using Renderman, MaterialX, and this does not apply. So if you increase from 0.1 to 0.9, oh, and there's one more place we have to make a change, and this is just Solaris being Solaris. We have to go to the camera and set up for dicing. And that's where we have to point it to the main camera. And once we point it to the main camera, there's our ocean. Okay. Now, I'm going to do an interactive denoise. Now, I'm going to explain something to you right here. Right here, you would think, well, we're done. It's working. It's great. Not quite. So we have no control over the ocean whatsoever at this moment. I'm going to add a node that will allow us to have control over the MaterialX network. This is a MaterialX shader, and Renderman can render MaterialX, but we have no control over its look because we're not, unlike in Karma, where you have certain looks and certain things you can do here, I have no control whatsoever. None. So we're going to be adding that node. But first I want to do an interactive denoise. I'm hoping that we'll see another thing that happens. It doesn't happen every time. It's not happening now. It was happening last night. Sometimes you'll get artifacts that show up in the viewport, in the IPR. What I'm about to do when we do the controlling of the shader here, this MaterialX shader, it sort of fixes it's hard to explain what kind of a problem it is, but it's artifacts, almost like the PCI card in my computer is not plugged into the slot all the way. The video card's not plugged in a slot. It's like garbled video that shows up when you go to do rendering or do denoising. Of course, it's not happening right now. But regardless of that, you still need to do this last step. So here we have a rendering. It's working. It seems to be going well. I want to have more control over this shader. So if you go to the scene graph and go to the Houdini Ocean Procedural and you go to the materials, there's a proxy which you don't have to concern yourself with. And then you have the MaterialX Ocean Surface. If you right click on that shader and go to more editor nodes and hit Edit Material Network, it will drop down and edit material node. And let me just move it out of where it is. And let me put it in line with the Ocean Procedural. And I'm actually, because I'm using a heavy setting here of 0.9 on the quality. I'm going to lower it to 0.5 just so it's a little more manageable. And you'll see right away I have much better performance by lowering it a little bit. I could even go further to 0.1 for right now. Okay. And here we have this edit material network. And again, we create it by right-clicking, going to more editor nodes, and then edit material network. And this, when you add this node right underneath the Ocean Procedural, you click load. That will load the material in the library. So now if I double click, here is the ocean surface. This is the actual shader for the oceans. And it's a customized shader. And if I double click on it, you'll see the actual shader. And we're going to do that now. Okay. This is the shader that creates the oceans. And we can actually edit this. Now, one of the things, there's only one node that we need to change in this shader network, and that is the MaterialX image node. The MaterialX image node loads a file called oceanramp. It is a 256 by 2 pixels image. And as you know, Renderman can't read EXRs. Everything has to be converted to TEX. We're going to do that right now. Okay? Now, I know where, right here, the file name, clearly, here's the path. So I'm going to go to that path, which is right here. And here's the ocean ramp. I've already brought it over to my hard drive. And I put it in images. You only have to do this one time in your life and put it in an area where you'll always have access to it, so that anytime you do an ocean rendering, you'll have access to this this texture. If I go into miscellaneous textures, you'll see the ocean ramp. We need to convert this from EXR to TEX. There is a problem, though. Unfortunately, because of the nature of this file, when I go and pick this image in the preset browser, excuse me, in the texture manager, and go to convert it like you might do any texture, and again, put it in a safe place where you can get access to it repeatedly, you'll see that there's an error message. I don't know why this error message comes up, but that is the error message in red. I haven't reached out to Pixar because it's such a unique circumstance, and there's an easy workaround that I just didn't mention it to them yet. But I'll probably talk to them about it and maybe have it. Hopefully, it can be fixed in Renderman 27. So we need to convert this. There are two ways that we can do this. Let's do the it viewer way first. And the it viewer way is very simple. We bring the EXR in. There it is. It's 256 by 2. Or excuse me, by 4. My mistake. So we're going to go File, Export, a full float EXR, and we'll just call it O2 for sake of argument. And hit save. That's it. Now, when we, and this is the part that makes me laugh. Now, if I go to the texture manager, and all I did was open it and then save it right out again as float EXR. No conversion yet. Now, if we go it actually will create the ASUS TEX file. So it just created it right here. That's the simple workaround. There's also, I'm going to go to terminal, bring up terminal. And there's this command right here, simple txmake command. And this is the command line version of the texture manager. And I'm converting an ocioconvert from sRGB linear to ASUS CG. And it's the name of the file. And then what I want to call the new file that gets written. And that will do it as well. So you don't have to go through the extra step. You can just use this command line. I'll put this command line in the description so that it's easy to get to. But you now have, and I have two of them. They're a little bit different in size. I think it's just semantics. But I don't need this one. And I don't need this one because I've already done it. But for this exam, I just wanted to show. So this is the file I'm going to be using. Okay. And all I do is I go in and point to this new file. You have to put the wildcard at star, and then you can read the TEX. So I put it to TEX. I then put it to raw, meaning don't do any secondary conversions like a double conversion. So it's already been converted to ASUS CG. It's ready to go. So just put raw. It's the same thing as none in PXR texture when you do textures, when you pre-convert textures. So that is all we have to do to get the file, that oceanramp, working. And the next piece is we need to turn on the things in the shader that allow us to work in Renderman, like changing color and things of that nature. So what we want to do is go to settings, and we want to enable transmission and set it to 1. That will open up settings in waves transmission, where we can change the intensity of transmission and transmission color. Transmission color will dictate when an object is beneath the surface, how colors influence, and you can sort of see it right here. And if I change the intensity to 1, you'll really see it. There you go. I'm going to put it back to 0.5. Okay. And that's it. We're done. That is all that is required to get Ocean set up. I'm going to go back to the Ocean quality, and I'm going to boost it to, we'll leave it at 5. That's a good number, and it's very, very lightweight. It's really, really lightweight. Now, there's one more thing that I want to do with this, because I'm not liking the depth of field that's going on in the scene right now. So I'm going to do edit camera. I'm going to bring the main camera into the primitives. And I'm only going to focus distance and f-stop. And I know what the focus distance I want it to be. I want the focus to be on this first iceberg. So I know that is 53.3. and I want the f-stop to be, we're going to go 0.1 just to show you. And then we'll go to the real number. And again, we can do interactive denoising, so it makes it a little nicer. But we're going to go to 1.2. Okay. There we go. Oh, and you do have to, if you want to see the preview of the ocean, you do have to highlight the ocean procedural. Okay. Again, a 5 is okay. It, you know, you're getting results. I personally, when I get to a certain point in Solaris, I do like to go to the it viewer directly. So I'm going to go to the render settings on output type. I'm going to go and set it to it. It is a little trick. There is no pull down choice for it. So I just put in it. And I make sure that the render is stopped, and that's more for licensing. There's a licensing issue where if you don't fully stop the IPR, it won't render. So I'm set to the it viewer. I'm going to render 1 frame. Just give it a second. It's waiting to bring up the it viewer, and then it's a very, very short time to first pixel. Obviously, there you go. And we are rendering. Now, in this particular example, I'll wait until it's actually finished. But in this particular example, I'm using RIS. And the reason I'm using RIS rather than XPU is because the Iceberg shader is a llama shader. So unfortunately, I can't render XPU. But let's try, and I want to at least show you that the ocean shader actually works in XPU. So yeah, I'll just... Let's see what happens here. I'm actually interested. I don't think the lights will work. Actually, yeah, the lights aren't going to work. Yeah, the HDR is not going to work. So let's go to Renderman XPU. There we go. And there we go. Obviously, you can see no shader. Unfortunately, doesn't work. The iceberg, the wet snow shader just doesn't work. XPU. Which is weird because MaterialX is working. And Llama is based on MaterialX. So don't know that one, don't understand, but it's just the way it is. Renderman 27 is hoping to bring XPU more to production. And one of those things would be that XPU is supported with Llama. Among other things that will also be supported. So I cannot wait. I'm sure you guys can't either for Renderman 27. So, yeah. And that is ocean shading and getting oceans to work. This part right here, this edit material, again, right-clicking, going to more editor nodes, and then edit material network. Don't be confused with the edit material properties. Okay. And then you load in the MaterialX shader, and then you can go in and you change the ocean ramp to your TX file. And again, you only have to do this conversion one time, and then you'll never have to do it ever again. That oceanramp.exr doesn't change from each version of Houdini. Now, Houdini 21 might make it so that's not required, or the Renderman 27 might make it so that none of this is required. If that is the case, I certainly will be updating the video to let you guys know that. But in the meantime, this is definitely required. Okay. And we didn't have the ugly artifacts, but I promise you, you will if you do not do this. Especially if you're doing like a rendering with frames. I had a rendering that I did and I had forgotten to do that part. And like every 8th or 10th frame had the artifacts and they were just popping up in the animation. It was horrible. So that's the secret sauce right there. Okay. Well, I'll even put it in there. Secret sauce. Okay. And that's about it. I hope that this was clear and it wasn't too crazy. And thank you for watching. And until next time, have a great week.